Hey everyone, how's it going? Um, I hope you're all doing well today. Thank you for taking the time to join us. As always, if you see me looking to the side of my computer, it's because that's where I can see your lovely comments. Um, so just feel free to ask any questions that you may have. And today we're gonna be just having fun together, trying to make a lens together. Um, And so I would love to hear what you want to learn about in the live chat. I saw that there's already a couple comments in there, so I'll try to address some of those. Um, and so with that, we can get started. Just reading to some of the comments here. By the way, thank you all for joining. I see some familiar names here, so really excited to see you all. Um, and uh, and yeah, so this office hour, we'll just be making a lens together and we'll try to cover different things based on what you all say in the live chat. We have another stream that we normally do at the end of every month, every last Wednesday of the month, where we'll do a specific tutorial that we plan for, where we're gonna try to explore some intermediate techniques. But this one's more free flowing. I want to hear what you all think and what you want to see. Um, and other than that, we'll just make stuff together. Um, so I see there's a comment here about advanced lenses, creating a game, and happy to try and do that. By the way, let me know if you're not hearing the sound very well, or if something is choppy or something we can do a bit better. Let us know and we'll try to get that sorted out. Um, let's take a look at what we can do. And again, if I'm looking for those of you who are just joining us, I'm looking to the side of the screen. That's because that's where I see the comment. So I promise I'm paying attention. Let's see here. Okay, awesome. So let's take a look first. Before we get started on the stream, I want to show something in the forum because it relates to this question about creating a game. I don't know if some of you have already played around the forum. This is a way for you to connect with us and the community. What's really cool here is this is basically an asynchronous way of doing the same thing that we're doing today right now, where we basically answer questions. The community has answered questions. I know a couple of you actually here on the chat have answered questions, so really thank you for that. But specifically, I want to call out this mini game 04 because I think that kind of goes to your question, right? Where Nico, one of our team member, made these multiple pages of a guide on how to make a game. So you can start with the first page, which kind of describes how the game will work. So if you want to make a game, in this case, we're making a game where you're catching things falling from the sky. In this case, a cookie. What you want to do there is have a bunch of objects, and then those objects are being spawned by an object spawner script. Um, so you can see she goes through like pretty in detail about how screen transforms work, how the script would work. Um, and then you can see that she's starting to go through like spawning objects, how to make the objects fall. Um, it's a really great way to learn about what you can do with Lens Studio. And then by chapter 3 or episode 3 here, she goes through how do you make a game logic. How do you create a button to start the game. How do you create a score in the game, and how do you use persistent storage, so every time the user uses your lens, they'll be able to see their highest score. And then in the last one here, chapter 4, she even goes through like some of our thinking around like how you want to clean up a game, or your lens logic. You want to make sure that all your function and the logic are divided into little bite-sized chunks, so when you're trying to make sure that your lens is working properly, you can just look at isolated parts of your lens logic without having to uh, try to figure out, if all your functions in one logic, you're not really sure where the logic breaks down. So she gives some insight into that. And so there's a lot here to unpack. And maybe that's something that if you're all interested, let me know here in the chat. We can do a session on that, on like how this, these written cores come to life, and we can go into a video on that, And one specific thing I would like to call out, one of our creators took this project because all of these example projects have a download here. Let me see if I can find that button. You can download the finished project, and then you can make your own lens. So if you want to take a second and try scanning this lens, you can see what people have made with this tutorial that Nico has made. So we probably won't be able to do a whole game in this session because that will take some time. I'll try to hit some of it as we're building a lens together. But yeah, take a look. And there's other people here making tutorials as well. Some of us here in the chat actually. So check out their channel. I've seen some of these videos. They're really amazing. But also, if you make a video and you want to share it with the community, feel free to post it into our forum. We love highlighting people when they are really helpful. So you can see a couple people here. Hamad from earlier actually wrote a guide here about the object detection and how you would detect, like, say, books and how you would go about doing that. So here you provide an example on how you can do that. There's another guide about using style transfer for machine learning, and a couple cool lenses that this creator has made. So it's really cool that we get to collaborate with you all, because I think some of you have made tutorials that are probably better than what we provided. So yeah, please go ahead and post that in there. We're happy to pin them and feature them because we're so excited. And it sounds like you're all already doing this. I love this live chat just right now, seeing how all of you are collaborating together, because as much as we can tell you things, we probably don't have all the secret sauce that you're thinking about in your head and all the creative ideas that you're coming up with. So we'd love to learn from you as well. So go ahead and pop them down in the chat or pop them in our forum, and we'll be happy to see what the community comes up with. So that's really cool. I made a realistic glow neon tutorial. Maybe I can find that here. I apologize. One of the fun things about life, right? So we get to do it together. Maybe, oh, here, I think it's at the bottom here. How to create a realistic tutorial glow here. So that's pretty cool. Grant and other folks, feel free to check it out. But we really love when people are building with us, because you all have ideas that we don't. This is really cool. So shout out here for taking care of that. Well, anyway, without further ado, let's make a lens together. I just want to just let you all know that we're really excited when other people are making these tutorials and not just us. So thank you for making these. So let's take a look at what we can do in Lens Studio. So what I was thinking that we can do, and I'll try to modify it based on some of the comments here. So it sounds like we want to do something around material editor. We want to do something around the game, and some of the more interesting techniques that we can come up with together. So one of the things that I'll also say when I am prototyping a lens or trying to see what we can do together, I sometimes like to start with some of the assets that are already in Lens Studio. So although these templates are trying to demonstrate a specific technique, they actually have a lot of really interesting, cool content with them that you might want to play with. So one thing we can do here, I'm going to go ahead and open this 2D objects template. And obviously this comes with, if you played with Lens Studio, you'll know that there's a couple assets that here we can play with. So let's take a look at some of these. I'll turn these off so that we can see a bit clearly. We got a headband here. Let's see, what fun headbands can we have? Okay, I like this dotted one. So for those of you who are new to Lens Studio, all I'm doing here is there's the objects panel in Lens Studio, which shows you what are the things in your lens. So in this case, this template comes with a couple example assets, this dots headband, and I want to use this in in my template or in the lens project we're going to make. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to put it out here at the top. And what I'm going to do next is I can delete these other ears and headbands because I don't want them, right? And I'm just going to go ahead and export these. So let's see here, export object. I have this folder called project asset. So assets. So I'm going to type this dots headband. And I'm going to go ahead and open new project. Actually, maybe another one that I want to show. Let's go back to the home screen here. I like to combine different assets so that way I don't have to worry about them since they're already here. Another good, sorry about that. That is our Lens Studio website. Let me try to open Lens Studio again. Oh, tell us what happened. So I'm going to go ahead and there's a new version of Lens Studio. That might be why that happened. So I'm going to go ahead and skip this for now because we're in the middle of a stream. So I opened Lens Studio. And let's look at a couple other templates here. Specifically, I think the one that I want to take a look at is, maybe it's in the face paint template here. There's a couple other assets here that could be useful. Similar to the template earlier, it has a couple images that is really useful to use. Some examples, but let me take a look at, there's some examples here. Sorry, wrong template. I think it was in the photo template. But what I want to kind of get is an area of the face. What is happening? I think my computer is mad at me today. Sorry about that. I hope you're all doing well, and thank you for dealing with the technical difficulties here with me. So I'm going to go ahead and look at that photos template here. And let's see. Yes. So this template, unlike the previous template, has a list of different resources that we might want to use. Earlier we had the objects panel where there's a list of assets that is already within the lens, but in this case the resources are in the resources panel, so they're not being used in the lens yet. But if I select this face mask here, right, again I can uncheck these boxes to enable or disable the effect. You can see that there's this pretty cool looking assets on top of the person's face. And it's using this opacity texture, full eyes, no lips. So I'm going to close this script editor for a second so you can see that this is the art asset, and I can select this texture and you can see that it's blocking out the mask around the eyes and the mouth, so we only have it around the face. I can press the opacity button here to also see that how the mask is being used. So if I move these points, you can see it does different effects on the preview. So if I select these points and move them around, you can see that it changes where the mask is being applied. And so if I click that face mask again, there's the opacity texture, and I have a list of different opacity textures here. So let's say if I only wanted the forehead, I can drag that forehead in, and now you can see that art asset's only in the forehead. Or I can press the opacity texture, and it'll open this up to see the list of textures. You can find the resources panel, and maybe we'll use this eye one. I like this this effect where it's only masking around the eye, so it's kind of like a pretty cool application on the face. And so what I'll do here, again, I'll export object, and I'll go call it around eye. So that's pretty cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new project and put this all together. Yes, it did unfortunately also had a crash there. I'm going to talk to the team to see what happened there. But thank you everyone for bearing with us. So what I'm going to do here is bring in those two assets that we brought in. So we have the headband here, and then the second thing that we put is around eye. So I'm going to drag those things in. And now you can see that there's these two pieces of the dots headband, right, and the face mask. Now you can see it's not applied correctly in the face, so I'm going to go ahead and try and fix that. First, I will put these objects on the camera because that's where we found them earlier. And now you can see that it generally works. We have the headband applied there and the face mask applied there. One thing I wonder is if I move this down, one issue here that you see is that the headband is on top or below the face mask. So this doesn't really make sense, right? This headband should be above it. And the way Lens Studio works, you can see that there's these numbers on the side, and that's the render order, which things Lens Studio will render first. And right now, the face mask is a render order of 1, so it's happening after the dots. So if I drag this to the top, oops, sorry about that there. I'm going to drag it above the forehead binding, and you can see now the dots is number 1, whereas the face mask is number 0, so it's going to render the face mask first and then render the dots. And so the way these numbers work, by the way, you can see on the right side in the inspector panel. So if you select an object, you can see the option in the object in the inspector panel, and it says auto. So what this is saying is it's going to choose the render order based on how it's sorted in the objects panel. So if you want, you can uncheck this and type in your own number. So I can say 10 here, and you can see, oops, 10, and you can see that should change it. But because this one is also on auto, this one became 11. So I can turn off this one, and I'll type in 1 here, and I'll put it behind. So in this case, I'll just leave it as auto. I just wanted to show that information there. And the other thing I'll say is, if you're not seeing these colored dots and numbers, you can press this eyeball button here. And there's a couple of things that you can choose to see what you want to know about the object. So I really like the render order and layers. Layers allow you to know, hey, this camera is rendering on the default layer, and so these things are on the default layer. But if you see, if I add a screen image here, this one's rendering on the orthographic layer, and this image is rendered on the orthographic layer. So that's a pretty cool way to play around with Lens Studio. So I'm going to go delete that, and now I'm going to put this headband back on top here. And so that's pretty cool. So now I think we have a good AR asset for our game, and then let's think of a game together. And then at the same time, I'm going to look to the live chat real quick to make sure I didn't miss any question. So let me take a look here. Awesome. So, sorry, I had to read for a second. There is no way to hyperlink from a lens currently. I will pass that on to the team as something that you're interested in. I love that your biggest assets would be your Chris idea. That's really important because we can have, like, in order to make a really cool, fun lens, you need to have great ideas. So feel free to pop them in if you have ideas, and we'll see what we can do here. And then about the ortho camera and the world element. So that's a pretty great question here. So let's try to talk through that for a second. So earlier you see me add a screen image. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again. Now you can see that there's 2 cameras. And if I double click these cameras, you can see that there are 2 cameras in our scene. We have this orthographic camera. And then if I double click this camera here, there's another camera here. We'll call it the default camera. But you can see that there is this blue lines coming from the camera. This one continues to be a rectangle, right, as it goes through. You can see here it's a rectangle. And then there's this one here that is more of a triangle that ends up in a rectangle. And so what this is showing is a difference between a perspective camera, or in this case, an orthographic camera. In orthographic cameras, as you move farther away from the camera, the sizes of things don't change. But in perspective camera, as things are farther away, things will change. And so let's try to show that in a second. I'm going to add a sphere here. So if I add this to the camera, let's see here, I'm going to put it at 0, 0, 0, so you can see that there's this sphere here. And I'm going to move it back. You can see as I move it farther away from the camera, the sphere gets bigger or smaller. Now this is not saying that the sphere size has changed, but you can see as part of the triangle, when you're farther back from the triangle, then the sphere is the smaller part. Whereas if it's really close, then it's filling up the whole screen. Now if I put this under the orthographic camera, so we'll set the position back to 0, 0, 0, so you can see now the sphere is on that camera. But we don't see it, and the reason we don't, as I mentioned earlier, there's different layers. So this is showing the green layer, but this is showing the blue layer, the default layer. So I'm going to switch that to orthographic camera, and now I'm going to move it back, so you can see that now there's a sphere. But if I move it farther from the scene, you see that it's not actually changing the size of the sphere. And that's the difference between perspective and orthographic camera. And the way we usually use these two different things is, one, whether you want the thing to be on the screen, like on a film layer above the screen, or in the world. And so if I switch here to the other side of the camera here, flip this to the beach side, if the sphere was part of the orthographic camera and things are farther away in AR, it wouldn't make sense if the sphere don't shrink away with the size of the world. But now if I put this back on the main camera, and again I put it on the default layer, put it in front of the camera, this makes a bit more sense, because as you move the sphere forward, the sphere gets closer and farther away, just like they would in the real world. And so I hope that kind of makes sense around the difference between orthographic and perspective camera, how you would use them or how you would add them. Generally, perspective camera is used when you want to overlay things on the world, and orthographic camera is used when you want to overlay things on the screen. So that's pretty cool. All right, so let me, now that we have a sphere here, and one thing that I like to do is, I want to make sure that we answer the questions that you all have. And so it's going to be pretty fluid. So feel free to pop in those questions if I'm not making sense, or if you got something to clarify on, let me know. But I'm going to turn off the screen image for now so we can see the sphere pretty nicely. And the sphere, let's attach it to the head. So here we'll put it here on the sphere. And I'll put it back on 0, 0, 0. So this is about where the sphere is. Double click there to zoom in. And maybe I will resize this. And maybe we'll put it on the nose here. Okay, so maybe let's make this this a bit red, and use Material Editor to do so. In our intermediate class, we do some more advanced Material Editor stuff. So if you have specific questions, you can let us know in the chat. But now I'm just going to try to have fun with it and make a lens. So one thing I'll say, when you add object, by default it uses this material, the default material, but I can also add my own material. So here if I use the PBR material, right, I can use this, and I can right click that material and press select, and you can see that there's a couple different options that I can do with this material. I can change the opacity, right, I can select these and lower the opacity here. So if I select that 50%, and then make sure my blend mode is normal, because we want the alpha to come through. I can change how metallic or rough it is. There's all these different options. But you may want to make your own shader, your own way of telling the lens what it should display. So I'm going to go ahead and use Material Editor for that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new material. So I'm going to click the graph PBR. And all this is saying is I want a material that uses our Material Editor in the graph. So if I double click that, you can see it opens our Material Editor. And it also opens up a graph. So let's take a look here. I can zoom in. And there's all these different things that says what it uses the PBR node as earlier, but it has some information about what information goes into the PBR. So in this case, you can see that this is the final result of the sphere. Actually, let's apply to the sphere real quick. So I'll drag this graph PBR to the PBR section, and I'll zoom in here. So the color of the sphere is going to be given by this PBR node, and the albedo, or what is shown for the colors, comes from this texture 2D parameter, which is a texture, and you can see there's a base texture here. And where the texture is going to be given by the surface coordinates. And I can scale the surface coordinate by this parameter UV scale. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and you can see that there's a base texture here. So this goes into here and then goes into the color. So if I change this base texture here, let's put this example texture. You can see that now this texture of a person is visible in the sphere. And then I have the scale number here, UV scale, and if I change this, I can change how many times that texture is being shown. So earlier we said, hey, we want to make this the sphere a different color. Instead of using a texture, I can pass in a color specifically. I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and the way I can do that is by pressing Shift and cutting a line here. And so now you can see the albedo is white, and so the sphere is white. But if I change this to red, you can see that the nose becomes red. And I can click this opacity. Hey, I want the opacity to be lower. I can lower this number here. But as before, right now it's ignoring the alpha channel or the opacity because this is disabled. So I'm going to go ahead and click normal. And now you can see that the sphere is semi-transparent. And then, so right now, the metallic and roughness is connected to the split vector, which is given by the material params. So if I right-click this material params here and select, you can see that it's just the blue color. Now, one thing we can do is we can just input this number ourselves. So let's go back here and set the opacity to be pretty high so we can see it. I'm going to press Shift and cut all these nodes. So now the metallic and roughness is not inputted by anything, but rather just by this node itself. And I can change the slider. So I'll make the metallic pretty shiny, so it's reflecting the world. And I'm going to make it a bit rougher. So now you can see it's a little bit diffuse here. So that's pretty cool. And of course, you can play with other values here. Let's see here, what happens if we set the emissive to white or yellow. You can see that there's different effects. Ooh, that's a pretty cool one right here. How about that? So that's pretty fun. So I hope this kind of shows a little bit of what you can do with Material Editor. It allows you to do creative things without having to necessarily have assets. And we're just using basic numbers. So there's a lot of tutorials on shaders on the internet that is not specific to Lens Studio, but definitely check those out. The other thing I'll say here is if we go back to lensstudio.com, you can go into our templates here. For one, there's a template called a Material Editor here, so we can say the Material Editor template, which shows some of the things you can do with material. And the materials here are using our material library. So we have a couple different materials that you may already be able to use out of the box. You can also go into our guide section here about Material Editor, and there's a lot of different information. By the way, in Lens Studio 3.0, we added some new features. So take a look at that. So we can do instancing here. And then there's a couple of new nodes like about lighting or using matrices and shaders and so forth. So those are pretty cool. So take a look at that. And then also, if you go into the template section here, under the let's say here world def enable templates. These def enable templates are using materials to do some of the fancy things that you can see here. And you can see that there's some example of material you can play with, like the scanning or the depth of field effects and edge detection. You can see how those materials are made, or even these caustic reflections uh, on the lens. So take a look at those for other examples. Okay, so those are some things about materials. Um, so I'm just reading at the comments here for a second. So there's this comment here about, could this game be like shuffle music lyrics, then you go to arrange them triggering your lens? So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, what we want to do is show different things on the screen, and then you're told to trigger that thing which you see. Um, so maybe one thing we can do is write a quick script where there's a couple different triggers that you mentioned, like maybe open mouth or raise eyebrows. Um, and then the user should open their mouth or close their eyebrows when those hints show up. Let me know if that is what you mean or if that makes sense. I'll try to see if we can take a look at that. So the question, can the def enable template be used by any phone or only new gen? It is available. The template and the lens will work on any phone, but in order to have def enable effects, the phone needs to provide def information. But what this means is, even if the phone doesn't have def enable effects, one of the cool things about lenses is that it will still work. It may just not be able to do all the same thing if your phone aren't able to provide more information, if that makes sense. But great question, thank you. So the first thing here we're going to do is create a script. So I create a new object here, and we'll call this like game logic. And then we'll add a new script. So in the resource panel, add a new script, drag the script here. And what I can do here is, let's just see how this script works. So I'm going to print hello world. Okay, cool. So now we have this script printing hello world. And what I want to do is display this text on the screen rather than in our logger. So we have this orthographic camera from earlier. Let's add a text into it, right? So now we have a text. Hello. Awesome. So now that's on the screen. And we'll start with a blank text, and we'll try to fill that text with our game logic. So the first thing we want to do is get a reference for that text so we can write into it. So we can do, and to get an input to things in the object, we'll do add input. And then we want the component, so component dot, and you can see there's a text component, right? Because we visual component that renders dynamic text. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and we'll call this prompt. So now if I click on that object, you can see there's now a space for prompt. I can click on that, and we can add the screen text from earlier. So that's pretty cool. And now we can say script.prompt. So what we're saying here is take this prompt, apply it, access the prompt that we've asked for here, and then we'll say dot text, the texting string to be drawn equals hello world. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now we can see, we can remove this print because we're now displaying on the screen that this text is driven by our script. So we can say, what is going on? Awesome. So now what we want to do is maybe get the list of different triggers that we want. So maybe let's say for different triggers. And by the way, this is just using JavaScript, so if you're familiar with JavaScript, or if you find a guide on the internet about JavaScript, this would apply as well. And so we'll make a different a list of arrays. So we'll say open mouth, and then we'll say raise eyebrows. What other things can we do here? One thing that I like to do here is if I open add behavior script, you can see on the side here a bunch of triggers, and I can press face event, and there's a lot of different things that we can look for. So there's face loss, mouse started. Let's do kiss started, right? So let's add that to the list. So these are triggers that Lens Studio comes with. And what I want to do then is I'm going to say that the text should be different triggers, and I'll select an option from the different triggers. So when you say the bracket here, so if I say 0, it'll choose the first thing on the list, open mouth, raise eyebrows, get started. In this case, I'm going to do math.random. So this is just a standard JavaScript. And so what it's going to do is try to choose a random option from this array. But you can see I have some error here. Value is not a string. And what this means is let's first try to print out what this math random says, right? So, so we'll put this back at 0, and we'll say print. And so this number that we're printing right now when we refresh the lens is 0.8714. But that's not really helpful because that is not, there's no item at 0.871. There's only 0, 1, 2, 3, right? And so what we want to do is you want to multiply this number by the number of items that we want to sort through. So different triggers.length. So if I print this number, you can see that my length is 3, so 0, 1, 2, 3. And then what I'll do here is I'll, in order to get a solid number here, what I'll do is I'll call floor. So I'll talk about this in a second. Math.floor. And so now what this is saying is let's round to the bottom number. And so if the math.random outputs like 1 times 3 is 3, or if the number is 0.5, 0.5 times 3 is 1.5, but then we round down, so we get 1, right? And so what I'll say here is for chosen trigger index, I'll remove this, and then I'll print this out. So now every time I refresh the lens, I should get a different prompt. So this says kiss started, raise eyebrow, kiss started, open mouth. You can see that every time I get a different things. Cool. I'm going to pause here, look in the comments for a second. Let me know if you have questions about what I just did in the live chat. I would love if I can hear your voice, but unfortunately I can't. So let me know here. Thank you for joining us again, everyone. Then we'll put this on. All right. Using the hand complexity used words that would compose the song lyrics. That's pretty cool, actually, the idea of using hand. So in Lens Studio 3.0, we added the ability to trigger things with hand. So actually, we can see here, if I install a face event, I believe I can choose here object tracking event, and then there's object found, descriptor start, descriptor end. And so what we can do is let's do this. Let's add another one here called show hand. So now every now and then you'll get show hand as an option. And then we just need to do an object tracking here. So we'll add one. We'll do hand. So we'll do hand tracking here. So now if I show the hand, let's see here, hand, you can see there's something there. But if I go into that behavior script, I can say its object tracking is hand. And then when I say print message, hand shown. Oops. I'm going to refresh here. And you can see that object tracking event, when the object is found and the hand tracking is found, print the message hand shown. So here, hand shown. So that's pretty cool. And what I want to do now is instead of the message or printing it, I just want to tell my script, hey, I found the hand. So I'll say send custom trigger, call it hand found. Hand found trigger. So now behavior script is going to trigger this effect. And so what I'm going to do is try to receive that in the script. So if I double click behavior here, there's some instructions about how this works. And you can see there's global API usage. You can see add custom trigger response. Add a callback function to call when that trigger is sent. And so I want to respond, right, when hand found is triggered. So here I'll say in my game logic, back in my script, I'll add global behavior system, right, this behavior, add custom trigger response, and our trigger name is called hand found trigger. Oops, here, hand trigger. And then I write a callback function. So I can say function print hand shown. And then you have an error here. If we look at what the error is, it says add custom trigger response of undefined. And so we look at add custom trigger response, and we see that behavior system, Lens Studio doesn't see that it already existed. So like before, we can it matters how the lens is ordered at the top of the objects panel. So we want to make sure that behavior runs first before our game logic, so that behavior system will be available. So now if I refresh, you can see now behavior system is found, and it shows hand shown, which is shown right here, hand shown. So that's pretty cool. And then what we want to do next is maybe we want to make sure people do these triggers before a certain time, right? You get shown the text, and then under 2 seconds or whatever, we need them to actually show up, show the hand before those 2 seconds is over. So what we want to do is have a counter to say how long time has elapsed. So let's see here. And because we want the timer to count every frame rather than just once, we want to do an update. So we'll do script.create event, update event. So this is happening on every frame update. And then we'll bind, so bind a callback function to this event. So I'll do another thing. And so if I say here print update, so you can see that every frame is printing update. And what we'll do is print the time that has elapsed since the lens has gone, right? So what we want to do is let's set a time. So when the lens first starts, time since lens started equals 0, right? And then every frame will add to this. So time plus since started, you want to add the delta time. And I'll print time since last started. And you can see that, as the time goes up, it will show the number increase here in the logger, right? So now it's 10 seconds, 11 seconds, and so forth. And what we want to do is we can do the opposite. So instead of adding, we can subtract, right? Time left. So we'll say Earlier we said you want it to be 2 seconds, and then so we'll say the time left, and every frame will subtract the time, the difference in time between every frame, and then we'll print right here, time left, and then we'll print time left. So you can see 0, right? So you go 2, 1, 0, done. And then what we want to do next is when this, if the time left is below 0, we'll say game over. So we'll say if time left is less than 0, then print game over. So let's see how this looks. And then if it's not less than 0, print the time left, right? So 2, 1, 0, game over. Okay. Now all we need to do is make sure the hand found happens before game is over. So we'll see what we can do here is call var has triggered, and then we'll call actually let's do this, let's do score, because I'm making this up by the way as I go along, so I apologize if it's kind of all over the place. I hope it makes sense. So I'm going to do is score, and every time you do these triggers that you're looking for will increase the score. So hand found trigger, instead of print hand shown, we're going to do score plus plus. So we're going to add to the score, and then when the time is over, we'll print score. So now 2, 1, 0, the game is over, but you get the score of 1 because you see the hand, right? So if I switch to not having the hand, so we'll refresh here, 2, 1, 0, the score is 0. Here we'll add the word score so it's a bit easier to understand. 2, 1, 0, game is over, score is 0. Awesome. So now that we are able to count the score when the hand is triggered, what we want to do is if the this chosen trigger index, if the chosen trigger index is equal to 0, so if it's show hand, then I want to show the score of 0. You want to add the score when that is shown, right? So what I'm saying here is you only want to count a score of, you want to add to the score if the hand is shown, only if show hand is present. So now you can see here it's 0 because kiss has started. But if I go to hand, go back here, it's kiss started, game is over, but the score is 0. But if I refresh here, look for hand shown, kiss started, open mouth, raise eyebrows, open mouth, show hand. So now 2, 1, 0, game is over, but the score is 1. So that's what we want because the hand is shown when show hand is shown, and so the game shows a score of 1. So I'll pause there. Let me know if that makes sense. I'll zoom in here on the code. I'll run through this again quickly just so it makes sense. So this is kind of our game variables. And then when the game starts, you want to set up how many seconds the user has to show the thing. You have a score of whether they got the thing right, and then what they should show when the game starts. And then I have this chosen trigger index. So when the game starts, choose what the user should show, and then tell the user, and then display what the user should show. Respond to behavior script. So this is what it's saying. It's like, hey, when the hand found trigger is called, add to the score if the chosen trigger is 0. So if show hand is shown, and then finally, every frame update, every frame subtract time left, and at the same, if time is over, show the score. Right? That's what we're doing here. And then for the behavior script part, you can see here if under behavior, hand found trigger is called when object is found. Cool. And I'll look here on the side. Yeah, so this is a brief overview of what you can do with JavaScript and lenses. But Lens Studio does use standard JavaScript, so you should be able to use or take any JavaScript class or grab a book about JavaScript or learn about JavaScript on the internet. It will apply here. So everything that you see here, except for some of the specific Lens Studio keywords like getting access to components or getting access to like every frame update, or getting access to behavior script, those are all standard JavaScript stuff. So it's nothing special. You should be able to use any kind of JavaScript class to learn. We have about 9 minutes left, 8 minutes left. There's a question here, is shouldn't show hand stop the countdown? That's a great point. So let's take a look at how we can do that. And then after that, we'll take a list of we'll do what with this? We'll do a homework, and then if we'll paste the script in the down below in the description, so you can take a stab at this. And then next time, if you expand on this game or figure out what you want to do with this game, go ahead and post in the forum, and we can talk about it there, or post it in the comment, and then we'll talk about it there. And hopefully, this is like the beginning of a lens that you end up making, not necessarily, we don't stop here, right? You are all way more creative than I am. So let's take a look here. So right now, when the time is left, we're printing the score, but this is gonna continue to update. So what we can say here is var is game over equals false. So when the game starts, game over. It still prints, but we can say here is game over equals true. So when time is left, game over is true. And then I can say if is game over, return. So what this is saying, if the variable game over is true, which we're gonna set when the time is less than 0, stop updating, because we don't need this we don't need to do any of this anymore. So you can see 3, 2, 1, 0, game over, and the score is 1. But if it's show hand, 3, 2, 1, 0, score of 1. So that's pretty cool. And so I'm going to list a list of to do here, that if you have a chance, want to try tackling them, and then also share it with the community, share it with us, and we can kind of talk through what we can do together. So here we'll call it, right now our score and show score and time left to the lens user. So this is, right now we're just seeing the time left and the score here in the logger, but you can't see in the lens. And so what you want to do is do the same thing that we did earlier with the prompt, except we want to show the score and time left. So we're going to add another couple more text component and then show that. And then you can, similar to this, change the text, except you want to do it in the game over stage here. And then what else we want to do? To do, add the other, oops, sorry about the caps there. Add the other triggers, add other behavior scripts for the other trigger. So right now we did the show hand. But you can do other ones here. Again, so something like you want to copy and paste this behavior, maybe face event, and then you can do the same thing with not open, and then you'll say not open and so forth. So refer back to the earlier part of this video. And then you also want to make sure that you only get score count when that chosen trigger is set. And then finally, and this is for Xcredit, as refactor the script so you can restart the game. So what this is saying is right now, when the game is over, there's no way to reset the game. And what you want to do there is, let's say, something like function reset game. Or let's do this. Let's use a behavior script. Response, and then we'll call it reset game. And then you can do something like time left. Whoa, sorry. We reset our original logic here. So we're going to say time left is 0, score is 0. And then game over is false. And so, you can create another trigger here. Actually, let's try it. Maybe this is already done. We'll say on tap event. Let's clear this. We'll go touch event, tap, reset game. So right now, game is over. I can tap here. Is it calling this? Print game reset. I think I didn't press the save button there. So I tap here, and we're almost there. Look, it's printing out time left is 0. So actually, sorry, time left should be 2 from earlier, right? So this should be 2. So now I'm gonna, every time I press, I can reset the game. So maybe, in fact, so we have this refactor the game to script, so you can restart a game, or specifically add UI, so user know how to play. So we'll do that. I've helped you out there, I guess, or we helped each other out by writing the code. It's right here on how to do the game reset. We just need to tell the user how you can reset the game and play the game. So I think that's the time that we have today. I'm going to take a look at the comment to make sure that I didn't miss anything here. Yeah, that's absolutely really great. We could all lack a little, but when we put our thought together, magic happens. That's a really good point. That's kind of why I wanted to leave some of these things to you all to kind of extend where this game goes. And hopefully we can make something really cool together. So yeah, let me know what you all end up with. Message us in the forum or comment down below. And we're always in the forum, so we're reading what you're saying, or if you need help with this task or this game, let us know, and then we'll play together in what we can do. And with that, thank you all so much again for joining us on this stream. I hope you learned a little bit about taking pieces from templates, some things, cool things you can do with Material Editor, and how you can use script to make some game logic, and use behavior to help you write your code. But yeah, thank you all so much for spending time with us. I can't wait to see what you make, so feel free to comment down below to tell us what cool things you're making. Thank you again, everyone. We'll see you next time. See you later.